Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 6 of the Sherwood Shakeup. I'm Matt Weinglass, your host for the next hour. We're very excited to have a very special guest with us here today. Before we announce our guest and I introduce him, I just wanted to say thank you to the entire community of Sherwood. This last week has been especially amazing on another level. Since we began the show about 5-6 weeks ago, one of the themes that we've been talking to you guys about is how do we get back on track in our careers in the entertainment industry? How do we keep charging forward with all the lockdown and all of the pandemic stuff that's kind of kept us isolated? And luckily, for the first time this week, we were able to get our group together, our company together at an outside venue and have kind of a networking party. And it was absolutely incredible. We were able to bring in some of the producers and people we've been working with, some of the actors from several different projects, and we're able to kind of talk about some things we have in the pipeline. But the best thing about this experience, and this was on Saturday, we did books, and it was incredible. But the most incredible part about it was the people that came up to me afterwards and have reached out to me and said, thank you for giving us an opportunity to come out our houses. I know it sounds a little dark and a little gloomy, but because there's still people that are very reluctant to go out, and even when we do something in a safe way, like I said, we did it out. We had a very open venue that was spread out. We were practicing, the COVID protocols as far as not too many people there, but the people that were there were very happy to be there. And the stuff we were talking about was basically these projects we have in the pipeline, and other people, the things they've been working on, the scripts they've been developing, the financing they've been obtaining, and kind of basically getting some different cast involved and elevating the value of our projects. And also announcing some more upcoming events that are going to be in person. Of course, we have this show. I'm really, really happy about the Sherwood Shakeup. It's an extremely great experience for me, just being able to do this and bring on all sorts of amazing people, including our guests I'm going to announce very soon. But the other thing is these in-person events that we used to be so big about a year and a half ago, they're starting to come back in a big way. And we have our very first in-person, in-theater event happening a week from this coming Thursday, August 26th. We are going to be in our brand new theater space in Hollywood called the Complex Hollywood at the Ruby Theater. And it's incredible, just the idea of having people back in a classroom environment. We'll be having a special guest come and join us. We're going to be talking about voiceover work and acting in today's industry in voiceover. Our guest will be E.G. Daly. She's one of the top voiceover actresses working today. And we have animation projects and audiobook projects coming up on our slate. So it's very important, if you own the Hollywood area, you want to get engaged and get involved with some of these projects and learn from the very, very best. Be at this event on the 26th, Thursday the 26th, 7 o'clock at the Complex Hollywood. Go to our website and get those tickets right now through Eventbrite. You go to sherwoodplayers.com, sherwoodplayers.com, get your tickets. It's called Spectrum, featuring E.G. Daly. We're very, very excited about that. You can also go to our website and some of the other stuff we're doing as well, including our film festival that we launched a few weeks ago. We're still in the early bird deadline for that. And if you're a filmmaker with any genre of film, short film, which means we're calling 30 minutes or less, any genre, submit it to our Sherwood Players International Film Festival. Again, go to sherwoodplayers.com, click on the film festival option, and you can submit right there to our festival. We'll be having an in-person festival award ceremony, screening event for the finalists in December in Hollywood. So we're very, very excited about that. So yes, we have a lot of things going on right now in the Sherwood community, in the surrounding community. We're hearing people getting a lot more active now, putting their projects together, putting their films together. figuring out how to shoot their films, which is an issue. And we are going to discuss more of that later today, actually coming up very soon, because this show today, we are going to focus on talking about the filmmaker, the independent filmmaker in Hollywood, in California, and what does that environment look like right now to the independent filmmaker who's trying to get their film funded and shoot films here in California. How do we go about doing that? Well, one of the ways we can at least start having this discussion is with our upcoming guest, who I will be introducing right now. I'm very, very, very excited and happy and thrilled to have our awesome guest, Patrick Kilpatrick, he's an acclaimed actor, director, and writer and producer. He's done over 200 films, and now he is taking on the role of running for California governor in the upcoming recall election right here in this state. Please welcome to the show, Patrick Kilpatrick.
Hey,
hi,
Matt.
Patrick. Hey,
how are you?
Very good. It's amazing to have you with us. Thank you for taking your time out of your crazy day. I can almost assume that that you're able to put a little time aside for us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, the wonderful thing is I'm starting to get used to the madness. It's very much like film production, to be honest, or prepping a film roll, or I've always kind of crammed a lot of things, fatherhood and writing and producing in together, and a lot of things. So I've got a really good team working with me, and I kind of know how to manage the time after many, many years of doing that. So it's a whirlwind, but it's been such a revelation too. So it's been great. I have a question I hope I can ask you as we go forward.
Of course.
I know that Medicare for all is a big issue among some of, I guess you could call it your constituency, your community out there. And I was listening to this wonderful thing on PBS before I was coming over here, and it was about that whole issue and about this activist who has ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and how he's been confronting lawmakers about Medicare for all throughout the country. So I wanted to chat with you today, with your audience, at least briefly, about how you think the ideal program should look like. Should I become governor, or should somebody else become governor for healthcare in California?
Right. So basically, and this is as governor, it's like you have opportunity in a large state like California, which is basically the 5th largest economy in the world. Mm-hmm. You have an opportunity to kind of experiment with what can you do in this state that can then spill over to the rest of the country. Because ultimately,
sure,
what we're talking about is how can, like you just said, how can we make something like Medicare for all a reality, not just in California, but throughout the entire country. So, yeah, the idea is the question you asked is very right on. It's how can we make this a reality here in California? And I think there's ways to look at some of these programs. The one that actually I know we were discussing this a few weeks ago. We were out at the Medicare for All rally that was happening. It was a march, and it was happening across the entire country in 55 states. The LA one was a very big deal, and it did not get cut from mainstream media. They didn't even cover it. But we were out there, and we had some hardcore activists out there discussing how we're able to do this. There is a bill that is on the table right now in California. I don't have. Let me see if I can get the exact one in front of me. This is a bill that will be a local or statewide bill that will allow Medicare to be accessible to every single person in the state. That with them all of the access that people that are paying for it have. And I think the main thing about here's the main thing about Medicare for all, and I love the opinion on this, Patrick. One of the biggest fundamental reasons why I think, just out of principle, a lot of people get behind Medicare for all is the idea that we, as workers, the working class, we have to figure out a way to take the job force, the employer controlled healthcare, and remove it from the equation. So workers don't have this thing over them that says you are required to keep this job if you want to medical cover your family. In other words, if you're in a bad working condition where you're not treated with living wage or anything else, if you're like ready to walk away from your job and say, I will not be treated this way, how are you able to do that if your healthcare is tied to that job? We need to have healthcare outside of the workforce that is just human, and therefore people can have that kind of enabling to walk into a job and say, is this a workforce that I feel like I'm being treated right in, and not feel like the health of my family is going to be directly affected by whether I'm going to stick with this job or go and try to find other work. Not only find other work, how about independent work? How about actually independent contracting, building a business? How many California would be more inspired to try and build their own businesses, to try and start their own companies if they knew that their families could also be covered with healthcare, and it wasn't like a one or the other situation? So those are reasons to get excited about it. But if you want to talk more about how we're going to get it done, I mean, we can continue that conversation as well.
I think you're touching on something that's at the central cleaving point of a lot of policies. And one is, there's a certain segment of the population that if they are subsidized, then they lose a sense of drive and impetus and ambition. And then there's another segment that believes that, as I hear you saying, that people will naturally pick up their own drive and energy if they are subsidized and lifted up. I'm not sure I have the answer for that. I know as a motivator of as an employer and a film producer, unless a person you want people that have that, they're there not just for the wage, they're there because they're passionately involved in the endeavor that they're making. So I think the solutions of California are going to take everyone rolling up their sleeves and going forward, even given the fact that there is a certain segment of the population. Let's take the homeless. The homeless situation is comprised of many different populations. There's people that actually have fallen on hard times legitimately through no fault of their own. And then you have the drug addicted, and you have the mentally challenged, and then you have a veteran component that goes across the board. And you do have a component that just feels that living homelessly in an environment is some sort of symbol of freedom, and they wish to function on the dole. So you have to have, if you look at the situation in California, you find that there's no infrastructure to handle these various different populations. There's also a sex trafficking component to homelessness. So the point of this in the context of your conversation is there has to be a state facility infrastructure that can handle these different populations, whether it's a city in the desert where people can be processed, if you will, and brought along so that they are aided in their journey. But you have to also remember there are a lot of drug addicted people who don't want to go to rehab. There are a lot of mentally challenged people that don't want to be educated as having mental issues. So you have to. It's a sort of tough love situation, which is very prevalent in any kind of rehab or structure that works as it moves along. So to address your question, there is you have to identify those people that are actually going to take the subsidy that you're talking about and not have their ambition and drive blunted, so that they became, as a society, they become lethargy consumed. So I think people should have access to health care. I think across the board, people should have access to health care. And the hope would be that that would free people to go on and live much more productive lives. I don't think we should be in the business of actually establishing that for healthcare. We should get people the healthcare they need, and then they get on. But there are certain circumstances where you must not remove the impetus of economic drive for people to go forward. So the function of government is to provide an equal playing field for people. I look at the government of California and I see mismanagement. I see lack of vision. I see lack of thinking outside the box, which is, and the bus as well. If you're traveling on the bus, the plain fact is, this place should be on solar panels and wind power 70 years ago, and yet we're not even any closer to that. The plain fact is, we should be using desalination plants for our agricultural water, and we're not doing that. There's no affordable housing. All the film production is leaving California. All the businesses are leaving California. And by the way, that's key to creating that element of prosperity that allows people to go to community colleges and to not work for three minimum wage jobs just to survive. The mechanisms of prosperity in this state are fleeing left, right, and center because of a combination of things: high cost of housing, over-regulation. And regulation is a good thing because you don't want eco-sensitive businesses you don't want polluters to be facilitated. But you started a business in this state, I'm sure. It's very problematic. If you want to film here in this state, I talk to studios on a daily basis. The last thing they'll let you do is shoot in California and in Los Angeles and its environments. So consequently, all of our business goes to New Mexico. I'm saying that all of these things are a synergistic ball. The high cost of union labor here in California actually is a contributing cost to the loss of film work to other states. So it takes all of us rolling up our sleeves, the private sector, government, the people, the unions, all of us rolling up to solve these issues. And we've really got to function together to get these things done. Right now, you have an oligarchy. To my opinion, you have an oligarchy, a political class, on both sides that are actually functioning not for the betterment of the people. It's not government for the people, by the people, and of the people. It's not solving problems. Our undocumented. I'm going on, but
no, it's fine. I like how you're connecting everything, and what I was personally drawn to your campaign was initially the filmmaking element of it, because I personally know, and all the people we work with in Sherwood Players, we've tried to set up film production here at big budgets. We've put some big budgets together, and wanting, with the intention of spending money here in the state, and for some reason we didn't fit the right algorithm, or something went wrong, even though we checked every single box and we were trying to get that tax rebate, and we just could not qualify for it. And the more I went in and looked at it, I saw, there wasn't anything we did wrong. It was that there is literally this elitist system set up where you have to be in the club to get those benefits. And that's something that just needs to change. So I was originally drawn to that by you, that let's get this 25% tax rebate immediately. If you've checked your box and you're ready to film, let's spend the money right here. Let's not go to New Mexico. Let's not go to Georgia. Let's do here. So I was drawn to that.
Well, as a lead actor, I always benefited and a screenwriter, I benefited from being able to travel around. But if you're a grip or a set decorator or something, you've got to move to New Mexico or Georgia, largely, unless you're doing the Ellen DeGeneres show here in LA, to have a career. You bring up a really good point. We proposed that 25% rebate on July 16th. Which, by the way, isn't rocket science. What you look at the situation and you go, how do we make California competitive to New Mexico and Georgia and Canada and the UK and New Zealand? You don't have to be Elon Musk to figure out how to do that. You put an incentive program together. You get the unions to work together with you a little bit like they do in Vancouver. You get some state subsidies like they do in Canada, and you bring down the cost of housing because you get involved with a 70% rebate to anybody who's restoring a vintage or historical building, so that young people can get on the housing ladder and people can get into houses, and it's design worthy and it's not an eyesore in a slum. And so you lower the taxes so that people don't have to flee the state and the businesses don't have to do that. So all of that brings back the businesses. Now, here's the funny part. We proposed a 25% rebate on July 16th, and July 21st, Gavin Newsom throws $300 million worth of incentives at the film business after 2 years of neglect and decades of neglect by the political structure of this state. So we call for the humane production of animal food, okay? Just so we're not running absolute abhorrent concentration camps of animals that we're using for our food supply. A couple of days later, Gavin Newsom proposes a humane hog production initiative. So right now, I say this without arrogance, I say it with complete amusement and satisfaction. The Kilpatrick candidacy is driving the only vision stuff that Gavin Newsom's coming up with. By the way, I didn't start out to run against Gavin Newsom. I started out to run in the arena of ideas. But these guys don't seem to be able to come up with any vision whatsoever. If they were movie producers, they wouldn't get a job.
Right.
You know, they wouldn't be able to solve any problems. So,
yeah,
you know, it's not rocket science how you solve some of these problems. The undocumented. How long, you and I have been alive, how long has the undocumented situation existed?
I mean, it's the whole time I've been alive. Absolutely. It's never been
exactly.
solved.
So what's wrong with giving undocumented people who've been here, secure the border, undocumented people who are here, give them a guest worker pass, they're on the rolls, they're welcome here, they're central to our economy. If they aren't convicted of a felony for 5 years, then they have a path to citizenship. They pay a fine for illegal entry over a 10-year period of $10,000. That's $1,000 a year in annual increments. That raises $200 to $300 billion. That pays for a form of the GI Bill, so those same undocumented can go to higher education after they become citizens, and they also can have child nutrition classes and English lessons should they so choose. You know, how hard is it to come up with solutions like this? But none of these people are doing any of these things. They don't even understand. We got gang warfare between political parties and nobody getting anything done. So
you make great points, Patrick, and I like how you're calling them all out and you're connecting your policies to the same fight, which is stimulating the economy and making all these things possible, looking out for the people. I mean, everything makes sense on paper. And like you said, Gavin Newsom is also putting these things on paper. But why? Because it sounds good, because it feels good. Are these things actually going to happen on his end? No, they aren't. And I think
no, they aren't. You brought up the healthcare thing. He's been talking about that, mumbling about that for a long, long time. Has it happened? No,
No.
it hasn't happened.
Well, what we're
So-
starting to realize, Patrick, and I think a lot of people on the progressive side and independent thinkers are thinking, you know what? From a populist point of view, to say, listen, the people in government, we had this, and what you're saying too is it's very true, but even still, we're kind of still apologizing for these people, saying they're incompetent. That's what's not happening. And I think that because of the pandemic, because of the lockdown that happened for over a year, I think that it's kind of like curtain got pulled back. And these people haven't been ignorantly not ineffective for us. They've been doing it by design. And it's very clear now. You take Medicare for all, and you look at the idea that you have how many millions of people affected by COVID, how many people their health was affected. You look at the total people died from COVID during lockdown. We know by statistics, by running the numbers, that 1/3 of the people would still be alive today if they had health coverage, if they had Medicare, if we had Medicare for all. So this idea that, oh, we're trying so hard, but we just aren't good at it, or we gave it a shot and we failed. Oops, better luck next time. No, by design, these things haven't happened because they could have and they should have. And the pandemic was the time where we realized, you know what? These people aren't working for us. They're working for their donor class. So my question to you, Patrick, is how can you, or how do you see yourself, you become governor, you get elected. How do you avoid the associations with a larger donor class that Gavin Newsom clearly is working for and not us? How do you detach yourself from that and say, I'm going to stay away from that temptation or that pool to work for them, and rather than the things you're saying right now and promising in your campaign? How do you fight back against that?
Well, I think you first have to come from a place of ethics and an adherence to the truth. And you touch on a larger issue. How do we expect to be governed appropriately by a class, and this goes all the way to the Congress of the United States, where they're allowed to do insider trading, where they're allowed to do, I think there has to be a fundamental examination of the structure that is governing us. It's an oligarchy. It's an institution devoted to its own maintenance of power. It's walk away after you've made your money and then keep being in that class. So it's being a member of a mafia, really. And I think you have to speak the truth on a larger issue. You have to call out these things when you see it and realize that the universe is not going to drop you off the face of the map, that great forces will align you if you speak the truth. I'm a screenwriter and a movie producer, and I get work from people who align with my principles. And by the way, my principles are pretty wide. Our campaign is about elevation and empathy for all. So if I got to the legislature in California, I'd say, look, my first impulse is I'm going to work with you. But if your greed, your personal self-interest supersedes the service to the people, then we're going to have to work out something that doesn't jive with that, because your desire to flourish in greed and self-interest is not what the purpose of government is. So, the governor has certain powers. He has executive decision power, line item veto. You have the emergency powers if there's an emergency crisis and if there's a natural disaster. And you have a pulpit where you can communicate with the Californian citizen. And I think you have to use those things. And politics is sometimes about what is possible. But at the same time, there is a line where I'm not going to cross this line and do this film just because, so that you can have your genocide covered up by, you know, giving me some money and making a film that's positive. Even though I think you have a point of view, if your point of view is genocide, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that film. As an advertising writer and a journalist coming up, I would turn down products that I didn't think were really good for the humankind. So you have to keep going forward and going, is this really the right thing to do? You know, Spike Lee said, do the right thing. All of us as people, Paul Newman in Hombre said, we all got to die sometime, just a matter of when. It becomes a question of, how are you going to live your life? Are you going to live your life in a constant state of fear and compromise? Or are you they're going to try to knock you down whether you stand tall or not. So you might as well tell the truth anyway as you go forward. The truth is, we talk about other countries having corruption. Our corruption in this country is just more sophisticated in many cases. So we have to address the root causes of why is California not a beautiful and prosperous and peaceful place right now? There are root causes for that. It mostly has to do with corruption, greed, mismanagement, and lack of competency. The same reason, why do we have really lousy movies sometimes? The same set of circumstances. Their aesthetics are in the wrong place.
I like your comparison to the artist taking on a film project or you know, getting involved, whatever, as an actor or just a producer, part of a project. Do you believe in the message of that project? I think it relates to politics. It relates to the issues you take on, and can you put your name on something? And as actors, I know a lot of actors will turn down a role because they're uncomfortable with the role. And like, actor to actor, we know that's a different conversation. I'll play. I know you as you established, like, acclaimed actor that has played roles. Obviously, I mean, I'm speaking to I'm preaching to the choir here, but you play a villain not because you believe in what the villain's doing, but you play a villain because it's a great role, but you still believe in the message of the filmmaker. And so I think that we can play any role we want as actors, but if you're going to put your name on something, I love what you said about make sure that messaging of the filmmaker, that you agree with that. You're going to say no. I will say no to something if I feel the messaging of the filmmaker goes against my values. So I think there's something to be said about that. And I like that you're saying you take that into the arena of politics. That's the only way you can fight the corruption, is having that moral compass when you put your name on something and say, I'm going to do something because I believe in it, and I'm not going to fall for the corruption around. That's great.
Teddy Roosevelt or George Washington or Thomas Jefferson or it doesn't matter, Antoine Fuqua, whoever, every one of us is, in my opinion, every one of us is going to have to look at ourselves in the face and know why we did certain things. You can't take 19 cars into the next life with you.
Right.
You can take a legacy of kindness and love and effectiveness and the love of your children and your mate and your relationship with whatever your spiritual being is. And I think beyond that, yes, earning a living is really, really important. And I think all work is noble, but that's not the same thing as having money and power being the only end all to be all to what you're doing. So we all have to decide those things for ourselves. This is a little theoretical, but the bottom line is California should be the global exporter of education and educational techniques. Instead, I think we're 28th in just America alone. California should be the global exporter of eco-technology. We're paying lip service to the environment. We're still pumping, and this is despite a lot of good efforts on environmental activists' part, but we're still pumping sewage into our coastline. As long as I've been here in California, since 1987, we're doing the same things the same way, and things are descending into much worse conditions. The homelessness, the education.
Let's stop. I want to talk about the environment because I've read your policy, and I love your attack plan for solar and wind power and different subsidies and incentives. I know that Gavin Newsom ran on that, and he still is. And it's like, for me, it's like, how can this guy? And I got to say, because I went to the source here, and I found out that last summer, during in the middle of the pandemic here, rather than implementing the environmental ideas and policies that Gavin Newsom has always preached and run on and made money on from his campaigns, he's in bed with Chevron, and they're basically, he's allowing new permits to Chevron last summer that basically pushed fracking up and down the state of California, which is completely horrible to the environment and has done nothing but ruin any sort of progress that we've been trying to make within causes in the state, which we need to be the front runners of. And it's sad to me that a guy like that can go and be in bed with Chevron and at the same time preach that he's for the environment and he's going to do all these great things. But it's like, I don't know. I'm just looking at it like this is ridiculous. This goes back to what we were talking about earlier as far as the corruption.
That's a corruption of your personal principles, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not something I would do, since I think at the basis, all of these things are climate change is a real central issue to almost anything you've got to think about. So why would you drive away largely the eco-sensitive industry of the film business or the video business or the other eco-sensitive? I'm a big believer that the business community has to function from an ethical standpoint as well, and a contributory situation all the way down the line too. Once again, it takes all of us to make this place a more beautiful place, a more empathetic place for everybody. And you can't do it if it's just the government. You can't do it if it's the private sector. You can't do it if it's just the people. But certainly the people need to call for that and want that. You can't do it if it's just one group. It's the union. All of us have to function as a family. And I've seen it work. In the film business, I've seen it happen in Vancouver. The Teamsters function like a family business. If one of your family is a driver on a movie, that movie comes to town, everybody comes down and helps out to get that film done. And that's a special contract that the Teamsters have with Vancouver. You have tax incentives from a state that is supportive. So what I'm saying is, as Californians, we really have to band together, because we're facing some challenges. They can be solved and they can be elevated, but not if we put people in power that are only interested in maintaining their own oligarchy and their own wealth and prestige. How does somebody become a judge or a public servant, a member of Congress, for $176,000 or $186,000 a year, and end up a tens of millions, multi-million-dollar person? How does that occur?
It's by design. A lot of times you're going to look at politicians, the longer they stay in their office, the richer they get. It's not a fluke that Nancy Pelosi is a multi-millionaire. And it's crazy. Like, you would think that being in public servant, in the field of being a public servant, you think that your goal would be to help people. But it sounds like for most politicians, their goal is to make as much money and get rich, and that's it. And it's so sad to me that there's not more people like you and more people with courage going out there and saying, I actually want to do something and make a difference. And and maybe they start out that way. Maybe that's the sad part, is they start out with good intentions, but once they get a little piece of that cake, look, I can have, look at the big houses I can buy and the yachts I can get and everything. I think something happens in the process, and I'm not sure exactly when it happens, but we've seen a lot of progressive people go into office. We've seen it happen time and time again, where they run on these things, the things we're talking about, and get into office, and then there's no follow through. So you're thinking, where is the follow through? Where is it? And it must be these incentives come up. Who knows? Maybe they get sit in a room and they said, "Hey, welcome to the club. This is how it's going to be. So I don't know, but I think you're starting from a great place right here in this state where we have to set the example for the rest of the country and do these things that we've been talking about. So I'm just so happy you're here to do this right now in this time where I know a lot of people aren't even considering Gavin Newsom, the Democrat. He for the people. I would never recall him. And it's like I'm here and I wanted you to come on today because I wanted people to have a chance to think for themselves and listen to the conversation and say that just because somebody has a D next to their name doesn't mean they're working in good intention. And same with the other side, same with an R next to their name. Those letters don't really mean anything. As far as where I'm coming from, I want to know that people are on a ballot. You're on this ballot right now. This election is coming up September 14th. Your name is on this. The D next to your name to me doesn't really matter one way or the other. What matters is what you're talking about, what your policies are, and what the actions are that you're actually going to do when you get in there. And I just want enough people to take a look and start thinking for themselves and stop just going down a list and looking for the nearest letter that makes them feel good without even looking at what the actual candidate is talking about and what they're actually doing. So I want to thank you for standing up and being for the people.
Well, I think we can all do a really great thing if we start from the standpoint of heal thyself and step forward and say it's not unreasonable that we have a government that serves the people and it's of the people and by the people. We come from the principles of this nation were based on all of that. They were based on, a lot of people don't know that 76 of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence didn't survive the war. They put their fortunes and their lives at stake for the expression of a great ideal and a great experiment. And many of them paid a high price for it. But we're standing here today because of that. George Washington held power for 2 terms. Then he was happy to ride home to Virginia and leave the transfer of power to other people. We have to expect, there's an old saying, people get the government they deserve. If we don't participate, we're going to get the government that we deserve. And we're going to get a government that is not necessarily going to have our interests at heart. So it's been great to be here. I hope people will go to kilpatrickforgovernor.com, kilpatrickforgovernor.com, and see our program. The other thing is, I hope that they will not fill in that ballot because it's patently obvious that advanced voting benefits the incumbent because people don't take the time to find out who's actually running and make the most informed decision. They go just off instinct and go through that. So I would ask a personal favor, just vote for people, somebody on the September 14th, but also go through the process before you send that ballot in and learn the ideas that are being expressed by all the candidates as we go forward. So thank you for having me. Onward and upward. And,
Absolutely.
I look forward to seeing you in the days ahead.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Patrick Kilpatrick, running in the recall election for Gavin Newsom. All right, September 14th. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you, Matt.
All right. Wow, that was an incredible opportunity. I hope you guys got a lot out of that. Yeah, people have talked about Sherwood players. What do we represent politically? Should we even talk politics? It's a hard topic because we are a community of artists. We should be talking about the entertainment industry. We should be talking about our filmmaking. We should be engaging about storytelling, about film financing, all those things that we care so much about. But then we have politics over here, and it's like I had to make a decision. How far should we go into this discussion today? And I think it is important to have this discussion. And we don't all have to agree on the same things. We don't have to all, be one particular party or another particular, movement. We can disagree on ideology, on policy, but I just think it's important as artists that we continue to to recognize we have to have courage when we put ourselves out there. And we want to tell our stories, we have to have people out there that are fighting for that, and fighting for the people, not for the people in power, but the people like us, independent filmmakers. So that's why this conversation was so important for me to have today. And I want people to understand that that's what Sherwood Players is about. It's about having courage. We have to be for the people. We have to be against censorship, and just for a platform for people to speak up. Again, you don't have to agree with everything being said, but we have to be for the right to say it, and the right for people to continue to tell their stories, and for the artist to prevail in this crazy time, especially during this crazy time. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today for the Sherwood Shakeup. Don't forget to go to sherwoodplayers.com for more information on how to get involved with our group and the upcoming events we have and projects you can get involved with. And next week on the show, we are going to have our friend Ryan Folan, a TEDx speaker and a business entrepreneur and a Hollywood producer, all those things, multiple hats. Ryan Folan will be joining us, so I can't wait for that discussion. So thanks again for joining us today on the show. Take care.